I'm going to talk about how to stop procrastinating. So procrastination is one of the self-sabotaging behaviors. So it exhibits itself by procrastination. So there's lots of other things like binge eating, scrolling, the inability to say no. Some of those things we've covered recently, and procrastination is one of the other self-sabotaging behaviors. There's a yes. So if you self-sabotage by procrastination, then do type a yes. And let us know what you do, what do you avoid doing, what do you keep putting off. So like all of these self-sabotaging behaviors, they present themselves in various ways, which means that we end up not living our full life, our full potential, because we are standing in our own way of making progress. So what does procrastination actually mean? Well, it's the action of delaying or postponing tasks or a task. And it's a task or tasks that matter, because we could all procrastinate and not clear things off the table or not stack the dishes in the right way. We could just keep putting off tidying a cupboard, say. But actually procrastination refers to things that matter. So what do you procrastinate about? I'd love to know, what is it that you keep putting off and what do you do instead? I remember when I was at university, anytime there was an exam or a deadline with a piece of coursework, there were 6 of us in a house and 2 of us just couldn't knuckle down. So we ended up with messy rooms most of the time, but really tidy rooms in that period leading up to a deadline or when we needed to get something done. And myself and my friend Adam would end up going out. We'd end up going to the cinema. We'd end up going to Harvester, which used to have a really good deal for students, anything but getting our work done, whereas other people in the house seemed to be fine and were able to just crack on to it. And can any of you relate to actually just cleaning or tidying up when you've got something to do, when you've got something else that's quite pressing or urgent, but you procrastinate and you just put it off and you end up doing lots of other things? I remember one of the members of our Healthy, Whole and Free program said she was meant to be getting something done, but instead of doing what she was meant to be doing, she ended up tidying up all of her handbags, emptying them all out, giving them a clean, washing her hairbrushes. Nice thing to do, quite helpful, but actually it wasn't really important, but she was procrastinating to avoid doing the test. So what do you procrastinate about? And what do you end up doing instead? Have you got any funny stories of things that you've just done, hello there, to avoid what you're meant to be doing? And why do we procrastinate? Well, we procrastinate to avoid some kind of pain. And that might not be obvious, but if you think about it, and if you think about what you procrastinate over, what are you avoiding? What kind of pain are you trying to avoid? Is it boredom? Is it physical pain, if it's maybe to do with exercise, or you feel like you're going to deprive yourself or something like that? What kind of pain are you trying to avoid when you procrastinate? One of the problems with procrastination is this thing called timing consistency. Our brain rewards immediate reward. Well, our brain sees immediate reward as higher than future reward. So although we know, or we read at the age of 20, at the age of 30, that face creams are good for us and will protect our skin in the future, or maybe even sun cream will help reduce fine lines and colouring of the skin in the future. When you're younger, the future rewards just aren't big enough. They just don't outweigh the present reward of not bothering. And things like doing your pension or your tax return, we put it off, we procrastinate because we just don't see that the reward is big enough when we can get more immediate reward. So there's that inconsistency in the brain where it just doesn't put the value, just doesn't put the weight on a future reward. But eventually, either the pain of procrastinating or the pain of the action coming up pushes us into action. So if you've got a deadline looming, then you can procrastinate, but eventually the pain of not doing the thing will outweigh the pain of doing it in the moment. So that's mainly what procrastination is about. That immediate reward sensation in the brain is outweighing the future, and it can take a lot of control and discipline to think forward to the future and think what your future self will really, really thank you for. And if you're getting into a cold swimming pool, it's often that first bit, isn't it, that can be really quite painful, and you put a toe in, then you put the bit more of your leg in, and you go up to your knee, and it's like, oh, oh, oh. And actually the whole process is far more painful than when you're actually in. And when you're in the pool, you're like, oh, this is quite nice. It's not as cold as they say. It's fine when you're in. So sometimes the pain of procrastination really is worse than the pain of actually getting the thing done. And the guilt, the shame, the worry, the anxiety, the constant conversation that you have in your head about not doing the thing, actually that pain can far outweigh just getting it done anyway. And that's what happens. And that's why we need to somehow make our brain realize that if we just do the thing, it's far better. So I've got 3 tips to help us, because if we keep doing this procrastination, then we just are wasting a bit of brain energy. We're not reaching our full potential. And we feel that kind of, do you ever get that feeling when you're faffing and you just don't feel that fulfillment? And that's because of procrastination. So 3 things. The first thing is to make the rewards more immediate. So to do this, you can do something called temptation bundling, where you pair the tasks that you don't want to do with something that you only do while you're doing that task or after you finish that task. So if you don't like ironing, but you love Bake Off, then the only time you're allowed to watch Bake Off is while you're ironing. Okay? Or you've got a favorite coffee shop in town, but you're only allowed to go there after you have done your weekly accounts or your weekly budgeting or your food planning, whatever it may be. So can you think of something that you can tempt yourself with? So do that temptation bundling where you say, actually, I'm only going to do this thing that I really love when I'm doing this thing that I don't want to do, or when I've done it. And it's not going to work if you just say, I'll listen to some music or I'll watch telly in general. It has to be something that you only do when you're doing that task. So that's the first thing that you can do. The second thing is that you can make the consequences more immediate. So part of the problem is if we don't start our pension in our 20s, in our 30s, in our 40s, we're not really feeling the consequences of that action yet. We will in the future, but our brain just can't handle that and just doesn't bring that into the present and doesn't really make it important. But can you make the consequences of not taking the action more immediate? So can you do something like, if you want to exercise, you're not going to feel the benefits of exercising perhaps until later on, a few weeks, a few months, a few years. Can you make it more immediate by arranging to have some accountability with a friend? So you're feeling the consequence. If you don't do that exercise, you wouldn't really feel a big consequence if you just didn't do it normally. But if you had to ring your friend and apologize and say you're really, really sorry, and you know it's been in the diary, but you're not going to go, then you've got a consequence of not doing that action that makes you want to do it a bit more because you don't want to let your friends down. And there's an app called Stick. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's Stick, but with 2 Ks at the end, where you can make pledges. So you promise to do something, and if you don't, then money gets donated to a charity that isn't your choice. So a charity of your least choice, as it were. So if you're not an animal lover, then perhaps your money goes to a zoo. Or your money goes to the primary school down the road, but not the one your children goes to, the other one that they're in competition with. So you can arrange it so the money will actually go to your worst charities if you don't do the action. So something like that, where you can make the consequences more immediate of not doing the thing you're procrastinating about. And the third thing is to reduce that friction of getting started. So like when you're getting into the swimming pool, the hardest thing is just getting in, and when you're in, it's okay. And how many times have you experienced that actually once you get going on the task that you've been avoiding, it's not so bad after all? So how can you reduce that friction in getting started? Can you give yourself smaller chunks of things to do? So don't see your tax return as this big looming thing, but instead, can you do the first page? Can you just spend 5 minutes on it? How can you break up the tasks that you're procrastinating about into smaller chunks? Okay, and if you do that, if you're able to tackle those things that you're procrastinating about a bit quicker, then you will experience less stress, less faffing, less anxiety, and you'll just be able to get on with the rest of your life, which will lead you to a fuller life. So it's worth doing. So a reminder of those 3 things: make the rewards more immediate, make the consequences of not doing it more immediate, and break it down into smaller chunks. So reduce the friction of getting started. Okay, so we look at this and other self-sabotaging behaviors in the Healthy, Whole and Free course. The next entry is 12th of January 2022, but we're taking registration now, and I'll pop the link into the comments. So let me know, what do you procrastinate about and what do you end up doing instead? Do you have any funny stories? Okay, I'll see you all soon, so take care and have a good day.